Apologies, guys. Can we take it again?
Cool. All right.
An author, yeah.
And author, yes.
Book review with Lifense. Take one.
Good morning and thank you once again for joining us right here on Good Morning GP on a Monday morning. And joining me on the desk is Ntate Mbulelo Mayikana Riamutsiba. We have met him, we've spoken to him before, and we continue our conversation. He's a business consultant as well as an author, and that is exactly what we are going to be tackling, or rather talking about this morning. Ntate Mbulelo, thank you so much for your time once again and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lifense.
I think today we are talking about constructed morals versus personal principles. And I believe that you're going to help us break that down for us. And I think let's just start with what are constructed morals? Just starting there.
All right. You know, when we're born, we're not born knowing what is right and what is wrong. That is a process that actually happens as a result of us getting information from significant others. It could be our families, it could be the society that we're growing into, and we then get to know what is right or wrong. And morals comes from that point of view, where you would find that in terms of maybe the society or the family that we are actually born into, we then get to be inculcated with certain value systems and also with certain information and parameters in terms of what is right and what is wrong. And that is then what I call constructed morals. Because those morals are socially constructed morals.
Okay. Yeah.
There are morals that are not socially constructed, where you find that perhaps you're going to find, and we'll get maybe back to that later on in terms of what do I mean by that.
Okay.
But all morals, when you talk about morality, that is a social construct. We're not born with morals.
Yes.
It is something that we
that
get
told.
Exactly, and we're told and all the stuff. But in some societies, you would find that those morals are clearly visible in terms of what that society see as morally correct and morally incorrect.
That's
and
right.
in some societies, the lines are a bit blurred because you're not sure as to whether perhaps there are still socially constructed morals, or people are now living their lives based on their individual principles rather than socially constructed morals.
All right. Touching on that, Ntate Mbulelo, personal principles, what are those?
You see, with the change in terms of society, if you look, for instance, in terms of South Africa, depending on your age, obviously, for some of us that are much older, there were clearly visible morals in terms of what the society wanted to inculcate to the young. And also what they saw as being right and being wrong. And with time, with the advent of, for instance, social media and all the other forms of media, including the internet, where we have information from various sources now, you have a situation wherein people do not only depend on the society or the communities that they're growing up, or even their families, in terms of getting information and also determining as to what is right or wrong, because there's this flood of information. And based on this flood of information, you then find that in some instances, people do not actually exhibit behavior that would be seen as that which is sort of commonly held by the society, but live their lives now according to the way that they want to live, which then one talks about your personal principles. That the society might say, this is what is supposed to happen. The society or the community or even the family in some instances might say, this is what is right and this is what is wrong. But you can choose and say, okay, this is how I want to live my life. I'm not going to go with the flow. I'm going to use my own personal principles that have now been shaped also by all the information that I spoke about. In some instances, even what perhaps the community has sort of inculcated in you, and maybe want to rebel against that, So you then find, in terms of this book that I've written, I actually ask a question as to whether are we having a situation wherein people are living their lives based on socially constructed morals, or are we now as the contemporary society living our lives based on our own personal principles rather than on socially constructed morals?
That is a depth explanation, Mbulelo, and I'd like to take you a little bit back to when you've made the differentiation to when you were growing up and to when the new generation is at now.
Yeah.
Would you perhaps give us an example of how were the constructed morals back in the day, and now you're seeing personal principles?
Yeah.
Give us examples of that.
I want to give you maybe very simplistic example so that you get to understand what I'm talking about. When I was growing up, decades ago, we had a situation wherein you'd find that there are certain things that society would say these things are not supposed to be done. Let me give you an example. Girls did not wear pants.
Okay.
Girls or women did not drink alcohol. That was something, it was taboo to see a female drinking alcohol or smoking.
Yeah.
Or perhaps wearing pants, because in terms of the communities that I was growing up at that time. I know obviously when we interpret that in terms of contemporary language, we can label that and maybe say patriarchy and all those things. But at that time we didn't have those labels. But the community, had that this is how, for instance, a girl child needs to behave. This is how a woman needs to behave. And there were reasons. We don't have enough time to actually go into it. Yeah. But if we have enough time, we could go into it. But there was a reason for that at that time. And it made sense at that time to the communities.
Yes.
But communities and societies are not stagnant. We move. We move with the times. That which was seen as morally incorrect in terms of a female drinking alcohol and wearing pants
and smoking,
currently is not something that is immoral in a lot of society, including rural societies. It's no longer seen as immoral, and therefore you will then find that with time morals change, and in some instances you would find that they change because certain individuals have said, I'm not going to live according to the morals of the society.
So now that's when the personal principles steps
But
in.
if you then have a lot of people living their lives using their own personal principles, that begins to form a particular culture and a new set of morals in terms of the society. So it's not necessarily bad to actually have personal principles that people would exhibit. But in some instances, it sort of brings a discomfort in terms of the society at the time that it happens.
Definitely.
But the one thing that I always talk about in terms of the book, which I want to stress, is that whether perhaps we are taking the living of personal principles too far as a society, such that we lose even the identity that we now
where
need
we come
to have.
from, and important morals of which have been given to us as we were growing up. Okay, so what could cause a possible clash between these two concepts? Or what is the significance of these two concepts?
I think the significance is the fact that you would then find that at the time that there is conflict between these two, you then find that in some instances there is a sort of disjuncture between that which the society wants to inculcate to its young and also what the young or the individual would be exhibiting.
And I'm sure it also causes some sort of havoc within families.
Within families, because some people will become ostracized. By their families or even by the communities that they belong to. Because I've seen in situations wherein this person would be seen as an odd one out in the community.
The black sheep of the family.
Exactly, and the person is ostracized. And in some instances, however, that does have an effect in terms of also your mental wellness.
My goodness.
As that person that is living his or her life in terms of personal principles. But I think one of the things that we should not forget is that at the same time, it is if we are a society, there is something that still needs to identify us as that unique society. If you look at our society currently, there's little that we still have that makes us unique. And this is why when you then see, for instance, Huma Sikela, there's a statement that he made some time ago, where he said that when people visit a country, when you go and visit another country, you then go there to learn about those people. You learn about their culture and their way of life and all that stuff. Now he says people that come into our country these days no longer come to learn about us. They go to game reserves to learn about animals because we are a sort of imitation of what is happening in terms of the world. So we no longer have social identity. We are the same as the other people, so why should they interact with us? Because they know they're coming from those societies already. So that's what the book then looks at. It looks at morals, socially constructed morals, and those personal principles. And unfortunately, a lot of these personal principles that I'm talking about are influenced by what is happening in terms of the world, which makes us lose our social identity.
That hits home. That definitely hits home. Yeah. And it's a question for you, as well as to you as the viewer, to take it in. Yeah. Think about all that Ntate Mbulelo is talking about and perhaps evaluate, you know. Yeah. So just to round it off, Ntate Mbulelo, because time, unfortunately, is not on our side, and it has never been, but how can one develop personal principles, but also not losing those morals they've been passed on from generation to generation?
Yeah. I think we cannot run away from being influenced, you know, by what is happening in terms of the world.
Definitely.
But it is important, especially for the elders, because I think that's what is missing. Because when I grew up, a child was raised by the community. The child was not just raised by the family.
Yeah, the whole village.
The whole village, you know, was involved in raising the child. We live such individualistic lives now as families and perhaps as communities, such that there isn't a situation wherein a neighbor can be able to inculcate certain values that are common in terms of the society. And I think we just need not to lose our society while we're still and embracing these principles that we're getting from all the sources that we have from all over the world.
All right. Yeah. Ntate Mbulelo, thank you so much for your time and for dissecting constructed morals and personal principles. And I believe that it really is something, it's a course for one to take in and to just really self-introspect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Business consultant as well as an author, Mbulelo Mayikana, right here on Good Morning GP on the desk. Please stay tuned in. More is yet to come right here on Channel 265.
Cut.